Why shouldn't we trust United States intelligence? That's a tough one. But fuck it. I'll take a crack at it. Let's go back to September 11th, 2001. 2 planes are hijacked and flown into 2 buildings in New York City. 3 buildings fall down. The math doesn't add up, but fuck it. The public's ignorant. The next day, the United States government, aided by United States intelligence, comes out and says, the attacks, which managed to subvert and get around the entire United States intelligence and military apparatus, was planned by a bunch of fucking towelheads in Afghanistan. Mind you, the attacks didn't just hit random civilian buildings in New York City. They hit the fucking Pentagon. But a couple of guys with box cutters, they managed to plan that out. So the media, the politicians, they call for war, and just like that, an invasion is launched into Afghanistan. Well, it wasn't until 2017 that, according to the government at least, the 28 pages were released, and it turns out the primary funding for 9/11, that came from people in Saudi Arabia. So did the United States government respond? Did they do anything to Saudi Arabia? No. They sold them billions of dollars worth of fucking weapons for the next 16 years. And when the families who had loved ones die in 9/11 found out about this, you know who led the charge to stop those families, to prevent those families from being able to sue Saudi Arabia to get financial compensation? None other than Special Investigator Robert Mueller. But the invasion into Afghanistan, that wasn't enough. The military-industrial complex, the deep state, I guess they didn't get enough money, they didn't get enough blood. So what do? Come time around 2002, 2003, they start to push their next propaganda campaign. They start to say that Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, had something to do with 9/11. Now, of course, they know he had nothing to do with 9/11, but fuck it, it's just more people in the Middle East. The country's ignorant, they don't know what's going on anyway. Then the intelligence community comes out and says, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. And the media and the politicians echo that every second of every day. And then the media says, and the politicians say, if he was willing, Saddam Hussein was willing to assist on the attacks of 9/11, you don't think he'd be willing to give one of his nuclear bombs to a terrorist so that they could set the bomb off in New York City? We have no choice but to go to war in Iraq. And just like that, the public gets all propagandized and the public cheers for war. Invasion into Iraq is launched. 500,000 dead people later? Who gives a fuck? These people don't know history, they don't look back, they don't care what happens. They don't even know they were lied to. But the public did get tired of war. They didn't quite understand what was happening, so they turned on President Bush. And then we got the illusion that we actually have elections. And Barack Obama, he positions himself as the anti-war president. Hope and change. And Obama gets elected, and all he proceeds to do is drop a bomb on Muslims in the Middle East on average every 20 minutes for 8 straight years. And he managed to be the only president in American history to be at war for all 8 years that he was president. But the deep state, Barack Obama, Iraq, Afghanistan, there just wasn't enough blood, there wasn't enough money in that. So what did they do? They used some behind-the-scenes funding to help get support for the Arab Spring in the Middle East. And then they basically were behind the overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya. You know, Hillary Clinton. We came, we saw, he died. So fuck it, Libya's destabilized, which turned out to be pretty much the gate of stopping people from flooding from Africa into Europe. And then the deep state tells us, oh, there's a big refugee crisis, and yeah, by the way, if you don't want to take these refugees in, if you don't want to have your culture replaced, you're a fucking racist. So they kill Gaddafi in Libya, overthrow, destabilize that country. They overthrow Mubarak in Egypt, and the Muslim Brotherhood takes power. They create a power vacuum, which leads to the creation of ISIS, which leads to millions of people being slaughtered, including men, women, and children, innocent people in the Middle East, Christians are virtually genocided. Then they say, oh, well, look at this. We got to do something about ISIS. These people are psychopaths. And look, they have all this territory in Syria. So what do we have to do? That's right. We got to launch a fucking invasion into Syria. And the media echoes this sentiment, and they get the people all propagandized, and just like that, the American military is going into Syria, and we're going to take out ISIS. And President Trump comes along, and he announces, you know what? I campaigned on beating ISIS. I didn't campaign on regime change in Syria. So President Trump makes an announcement. He says, don't worry about it. In the next week, we're probably going to start withdrawing forces from Syria, and we're going to pull out. So what happens? Bashar al-Assad hears this news that America's going to leave his country and he's not going to get killed by SEAL Team 6. Well, the deep state, American intelligence, will tell you that Assad proceeded to launch a chemical weapon attack with no military objective against ISIS, which had already been defeated. Oh, sorry, not against ISIS, but against civilian populations, specifically children. And he made sure to leave enough evidence behind that the white helmets would be conveniently there to take photographs and make sure the world knows that Bashar al-Assad's a monster. That the West needs to invade Syria. And just like that, because of the United States Intelligence Service, millions and millions and millions of people in the Middle East have been slaughtered for greed of the military-industrial complex. And that's just since the year 2001. We could go back before then. It's estimated that the United States of America, specifically the CIA, has meddled in 81 elections between 1946 and the year 2000. And if you look up the Church Committee, you would know that the United States Intelligence Services, the CIA, spent billions of dollars buying off reporters overseas to push United States propaganda, which often led to war propaganda. And this doesn't even get into the other false flags in American history, you know, the babies and incubators lie, which led to the Gulf War, or the Gulf of Tonkin lie, which led to the Vietnam War, which led to another 1 million people dead. But, fuck it. Once you get past the first dead 1 million people, no one's really counting anyway. So should we trust United States Intelligence Services? Maybe you should read a fucking history book before you answer that question.